plan B is always not about monetary compensation, I would say. It's also about learning new things, new developments, कुछ भी sector में, because ultimately जब आप interview में जाएंगे, those skills will be reflected.
Hi everyone, my name is Anuj Jindal and I welcome you with another discussion with UPSC toppers of 2022. आज मेरे साथ हैं सुरभि पाठक. She has attained a rank of 156 in 2022 UPSC examination. और हम लोग आज मोटिवेशन से आगे जाने की कोशिश करेंगे. We'll try and get towards discipline. थोड़ा सा हिस्ट्री मैं बता देता हूँ आपको सुरभि पाठक के बारे में, and then she will also talk about herself briefly. So she decided to write UPSC in 2020. That was her first attempt. उसमें प्री नहीं क्लियर हुआ. Then she wrote another UPSC examination in 2021. Next attempt. उसमें भी प्री नहीं क्लियर हुआ. And finally in 2022 she cleared all the 3 levels and finally got a rank of 156. तो यहाँ पे मोटिवेशन तो काम नहीं कर सकता है खाली. There has to be something more, and that something more is discipline. So we'll be talking about that. We'll try and understand her strategy, her ways of studying, what went wrong in these first 2 attempts, what went right in the 3rd attempt. ये सारी चीजें डिस्कस करने की कोशिश करेंगे. First of all, congratulations, Surbhi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
थोड़ा सा अपने बारे में, if you can explain to the students, where do you come from, education कहाँ से किया है, work-ex भी है, so what did you learn from that work-ex, और फिर how did you get the inspiration, from where did you get the inspiration or the idea that you want to write this examination?
Firstly, talking about the qualifications, so I've done BTech in Chemical Engineering from NIT Nagpur. Post that, I pursued MBA in Business Economics from Delhi University, and I have about 3.5 years of work experience with primarily in the banking industry with ANZ Bank and American Express. And my motivation was always from the graduation that I have to appear for the exam, but it was never an immediate attempt. I wanted to gain some knowledge in terms of having some postgraduate degree. So I started with the MBA, and then I wanted to have some corporate experience as well, because it helps in holistic development and it also provides a sense of financial independence, which I was looking for. And coming to the journey, I think I started in 2020 full-fledged preparation. And as I mentioned, I was working, so it was more about balancing my job along with the process of UPSC entirely.
बहुत सारे students हैं who drop their work in order to appear for this exam, who stop working, who take a break, and because they normally feel that it would be too much for them to handle. But there must be some aspects of your job that were helpful while your preparation in the interview, because you've got beautiful marks in the interview as well, 193. That's a very high score. So what do you think, what aspects of your job that you learned on the job were useful for you in the interview or in general in the entire prep?
So one advantage I had was it was during the pandemic that I started. So I was working from home the entire time as I was preparing. So I could at least take out 3 to 4 hours per day, and then I had all the weekend to prepare. So I think it gave me enough leeway to prepare for the exam while doing the job. And I think it's easy to manage once you figure out the priorities, that okay, job is there, but I have to see a further goal in terms of having some level of achievement in terms of say 5-10 years. So that sense of motivation is always there, plus job also helps. So the work that I was doing, so it was because I had that background, so I could enjoy the work I was doing. I could actually see how the banking industry runs, how the economy of a country is contributing in a way. So that kind of helped me in preparing better for the exam also, to have that practical approach towards life and towards studies as well. So I think it was a enjoyable journey, I would say, balancing both.
Interview में 193 आए. Of course, nobody knows what happens in the interview room and why such marks are awarded or very less marks are awarded. But there must be some idea as to these are the reasons, according to me, I was able to score well in my first interview itself. So what, according to you, worked well for you out there?
So basic for the interviews, of course, preparation is always there, which everybody does. But above and beyond that, I think there are a few personality traits I would say are key. So one thing, I was very honest in terms of my answers. So for example, I was asked if I was working or not. So I had to quit my job before the interview for better preparation. So I intentionally did not mention it, but in the conversation it came out, and they actually asked me again, when have you quit? So I think I was very honest in my approach. And in terms of other questions also, so understanding where my background is in terms of engineering plus management, how can I use that in practical life, and how the world around us revolves around that. So I think that approach of more practicality, more understanding a wider perspective, that is what essentially helps. And my background, I think, has helped me in developing that perspective.
Prelims की तरफ आते हैं थोड़ा सा.
Yes.
Now you could not clear prelims in first two attempts, but you cleared everything in the third attempt. What went wrong in these first two attempts? If you look back and see, the objective of asking this question is कि जो student अब तैयारी शुरू कर रहा है, is going to write in 24 or 25. He or she should not make the same mistake. So what do you think did not work well in your favor in those first two attempts?
So prelims, I think सबसे ज़्यादा competitive stage है, because it's a very less success ratio in prelims. So it's very essential to understand reading is one part of the syllabus, but implementation and strategizing for the exam is another, because we get those 100 questions in 2 hours, and it's very unpredictable. Every time the options are changed or the questions become tricky. So I think one thing that I did not do in the first two attempts was I was attempting less. So I was attempting about 72 questions, and I did not realize that I had a very low accuracy. So my usual accuracy was 60 to 70%. And उससे मुझे पता चला that cut off clear करना 70 attempts में is not feasible. And so the change that I did was on two levels. One was, I think, more mocks. So I gave about 80 mocks just to understand where am I going wrong, what is my accuracy, and tracking every mock. And the second thing, I think, मैंने PYQs बहुत ज़्यादा analyze किया. So in terms of reading every option, where could it be entirely wrong? So for example, a figure could be wrong, an organization could be wrong. So having that understanding in terms of going into the examiner's mindset, for example, and then attempting more questions. So I think these two things, they helped me a lot.
Mains आपका पहला था, और in this first attempt only you were able to clear mains with very good marks. तो mains में ऐसा, while preparing, what all unique things do you feel you adopted जिससे कि आपके marks अच्छे आए mains में?
Mains, I think, is a very long process. It started from 2020 itself. So पहले मैंने try किया along with my prelims that mains का firstly syllabus देखूं, restricting my sources. So for every topic I had one source only. And current affairs, of course, we update regularly, but static source should be one. Secondly, मैंने try किया जो भी previous toppers है उनके answers देखने, उनका copies देखने का. So one thing I did was I took a copy and I started jotting down whatever answers they are writing, just to see in 3 hours how many questions I am able to write. And I could see that I was not able to attempt a lot of questions just by copying itself. So that gave me an understanding that it requires a lot of answer writing practice. So वो मैंने initially काफ़ी पहले से focus किया था, that having a broad perspective in terms of introduction, body, conclusion, and then further dividing in terms of pointers or diagrams or figures, and then always having an optimistic conclusion, because ultimately वो बहुत ज़रूरी है. तो वो perspective पहले से था. So by the time I cleared prelims, I had about 3 months. So my understanding in terms of executing those GS papers was completed. It was always about learning new things, gathering all the things that I have done, and writing more and more, giving more mocks. So just to complete the paper.
तो pre और mains के बीच में how much time do you think you must have spent on reading versus writing? Did you spend a lot of time on reading the same thing again and again? What was your strategy like?
With reading, I think I spent about 1 to 1.5 months finalizing जो भी मैंने पढ़ा है, all my resources consolidating, and then last 1.5 months it was always about mocks, analyzing those mocks and improving wherever I could. Okay. So that was the ratio.
Okay. So you told me that you picked up the toppers' answer sheets and you just copied them.
Yes.
And even then you were not able to complete all the 20 answers in 3 hours. So how do you think that helped you in the longer run in mains? Because this is something that majority of the students don't do.
Yes.
This is something very unique. तो इससे क्या help हुआ, and how did it help you understand the perspective of answer writing itself?
One thing I think it helped me in developing that mental mindset that completing 2 papers, 3 hours each in a day, it requires a lot of uh, physical effort as well in terms of execution of whatever you have read. So I think one was that. Second thing, more about understanding how to write. So अगर मैं analyze कर रही हूँ किसी भी topper का paper, I could see content is more or less similar. It's one, 2 points that they have added, but it's the way that they are writing in terms of again adding diagrams, adding new perspective, adding pointers. I think वो बहुत important है to break the monotony, because examiner के लिए भी it will be very difficult if it's monotonous and same pattern again and again. So that uniqueness comes from analyzing those papers.
थोड़ा प्लान बी की तरफ आते हैं बिकॉज यू हैड बीन वर्किंग all the time simultaneously while preparing. What do you think is the importance of plan B? What was its importance for you? और जो स्टूडेंट्स अब तैयारी करने की सोच रहे हैं, should they be thinking about it? Is there anything wrong with it? What's your take on this?
So I think plan B बहुत individual centric approach है, because I had that MBA किया था, so PG degree था, and then I wanted to work. So it was almost internally I think I was driven कि काम भी करना है, exam भी देना है. So plan B was always my work, but then motivation था कि करना भी है. But I think in today's time with all the competitiveness that we see in this exam and the unpredictable nature of the exam, I think plan B is essential, because एक sense of satisfaction रहता है that I'll give my best, but if at all नहीं हुआ तो then I have something to look forward to. तो वो बहुत essential था एटलीस्ट मेरे mental peace के लिए. And again depends on individual to individual. So अगर आप young हैं, you're just a graduate, तो आप initially I think few years you can explore UPSC and give a full-fledged attempt. But अगर आप improve करना चाह रहे हैं further, तो it's good to have some skills that you could gain. So plan B is always not about monetary compensation, I would say. It's also about learning new things, new developments, कुछ भी sector में, because ultimately जब आप interview में जाएंगे, those skills will be reflected. It's not only your studies, but the skills that you've gathered over the years, it helps immensely. At least in my case, it happened.
My next question is about answer writing. So if a student is starting today और उसको पता है that he is bad at answer writing, then what steps should he or she take जिससे कि वो अगले 3 महीने 6 महीने में they can improve upon their skills?
Firstly, I think understanding खुद का orientation in terms of writing, because it's not entirely answer writing. It's about completing that one question in a best possible way. So I think firstly understand करना कि pointers चाहिए, option diagrams चाहिए, figures चाहिए. So that is what the key is. And secondly, also analyzing toppers ka answer sheet. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important to see what toppers are writing, because ultimately it's not only about content, because sabka content is more or less similar. It's about their presentation skills. So I think that is very important to develop initially. So once you have that ready, building the content and execution becomes a lot simpler. So I think पहले वो analysis ज़रूरी है, and then work upon.
तो कितना टाइम लगाना चाहिए? बिकॉज this is what happens. We look at some answers, toppers answer sheets, we spend about a day on them, and then we forget about it. That this is what actually happens. How much time did you spend on toppers answer sheets, on figuring out what kind of questions UPSC is asking? इसमें कितना समय लगाया है टोटल अप्रोक्सीमेटली, अगर हम समझने की कोशिश करें?
मेरे लिए आई थिंक मैंने काफ़ी टाइम स्पेंड किया था, बिकॉज सेकेंड अटेम्प्ट के बाद आई हैड अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम टिल द प्रीलिम्स. सो मैंने देखा था कि क्या टॉपर्स लिख रहे हैं, लेट्स फोकस ऑन मेंस फॉर लाइक अ मंथ और 2, एंड जस्ट टू सी कि मैं कितना लिख पा रही हूँ, और हाउ लेजिबल इट इज़, एंड हाउ इट इज़ टू द डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. बिकॉज हम बहुत कुछ लिख देते हैं जो एक्चुअली पूछा नहीं गया है क्वेश्चन में. सो दैट प्रायोरिटाइजिंग पॉइंट्स ऑल्सो वो वहाँ से रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाएगा. तो आई थिंक 1-2 months मैंने दिया था जस्ट टू अंडरस्टैंड कि मुझे कैसे अटेम्प्ट करना है, एंड देन आई फोकस मोर ऑन माई रिसोर्सेज एंड माई कंटेंट.
So do you think that writing one answer, 2 answers every day is right, or did you follow the approach of writing one complete test every week, or at least 10 questions in one go every week? What do you think is a better strategy for a future student?
I think again it's individual centric, because as I was working, so मेरे पास daily liberty नहीं था कि मैं ज़्यादा लिख पाऊँ, because I had to read a lot as well. So I prepared the content, the material in the week, and then before the mains, for example 2 months before the mains, I started writing full mocks on the weekend. So one thing जो मैंने किया was toppers के answers लिख लिए and then mocks दिए 3 hours full के. Again वो आपके perspective पे है कि how much have you covered and where do you think you're faltering.
Management optional पे आते हैं because that was your optional. You've got amazing marks there, 258, which is a very good score in this optional. So how was it for you as an optional? कितना comfortable था, कितना discomfort था, and what worked for you in this optional? How did you prepare? क्या क्या उसमें काम किया?
So management का I think it's a long journey because optional subject choose करना बहुत important था मेरे लिए given the less time I had because मैंने MBA किया हुआ है, so I had that management knowledge, basic knowledge पहले से था, but syllabus देख के मुझे लगा first of all it's a very wide syllabus for management, not sure of the other options, but मुझे लगा थोड़ा ज़्यादा है. So again restricting the sources was key. So I had one book I think for every topic and then also choosing the topics that are there in the syllabus. और उसके बाद आई ट्राई टू इम्प्रूव माई आंसर राइटिंग बिकॉज GS और ऑप्शनल में थोड़ा डिफरेंस आ जाता है इन टर्म्स ऑफ आंसरिंग. हियर यू हैव टू राइट लाइक एन एक्सपर्ट एज एन जिसका थोड़ा डीपर नॉलेज है कंपेयर टू GS. सो पहले वो डेवलप किया इन टर्म्स ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग सेफ कोई भी थ्योरी है, सो व्हाट वाज द डिमांड ऑफ द थ्योरी, व्हाट वाज द टाइम, तो वो सब डेवलप किया एंड आई ऑलवेज फोकस्ड ऑन राइटिंग एग्जाम्पल्स. तो हर क्वेश्चन में बिकॉज फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैनेजमेंट में मार्केटिंग सब्जेक्ट है, वी सी इट अराउंड अस एवरीवेयर, एवरी कंपनी इज डूइंग दैट. So which is the unique trait of any company, how is it succeeding? So अगर वो मैं add कर रही हूँ in question, so it adds up to the question in terms of having some uniqueness, so वो सबको अच्छा लगेगा. I think my focus was on that. And secondly I was good at numericals, so मेरे को था कि in limited time I can finish a lot more in numericals, so my focus was more on that as well along with theory, and I think that reflected in my paper 2 marks as well. So I think वो प्रायोरिटाइज करना कि विच इज़ योर फोकस एरिया, विच इज़ योर स्ट्रेंथ इज इम्पोर्टेंट.
एथिक्स में यू स्कोर्ड वेरी गुड मार्क्स और एथिक्स में ही लोगों के बहुत कम नंबर भी आते हैं GS4 में. तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक इज द राइट वे ऑफ अप्रोचिंग दिस पेपर टू बी एबल टू स्कोर वेल? ऐसा क्या करना चाहिए?
एथिक्स आई थिंक सबसे ज़्यादा डिमांडिंग पेपर है आउट ऑफ ऑल बिकॉज वन यू हैव टू राइट मोर एंड व्हेन यू राइटिंग इन दोज 3 hours thinking goes out of the window because सोच नहीं सकते हम while writing, it just comes naturally. So I think शुरू से वो mindset build करना in terms of से कुछ भी example, emotional intelligence है, attitude है, so अगर वो mindset correct है, mindset बहुत optimistic है, वो अपने आप reflect होगा answers में. So ethics as a subject मेरे को बहुत पसंद था in terms of reading new things every day. And again paper भी prioritize करना है because half paper is questions, other half is case studies. So my approach was always finishing case studies first. So in the 1.5 hours that I had initially, मैंने सारे case studies complete किए थे. And इस attempt में क्या हुआ? I think case studies बहुत ज़्यादा I think broad था in terms of 5-6 options for every case study. And हर चीज़ बार बार repetitive लग रही थी. But again अगर score करना है तो हर answer, हर question attempt करना है, हर even subsection attempt करना है. So I think I focused more on that. So it took me, I think, about 1 hour 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So I had only about 1 hour 15 minutes for the 13 questions other than that. And usme my speed mattered because I completed the paper and I could not think a lot. I just kept on writing. So again, I think जो मेरा mindset था in terms of approaching questions, that helped. And adding to that, examples add करना. जो भी suppose कोई IAS officer कर रहे हैं, अच्छे initiatives ले रहे हैं, mention that because वो बहुत ज़रूरी है for practicality.
तो मैनेजमेंट ऑप्शनल में भी काफ़ी केस स्टडीज आती भी हैं एंड यू मस्ट हैव रेड देम आल्सो एज इन योर MBA और काम भी कर रहे थे. तो वाज देयर एन ओवरलैप इन द वे यू थिंक फॉर मैनेजमेंट ऑप्शनल सम एस्पेक्ट्स और GS4 ethics? Did anyone help in the other?
Actually हाँ, GS से कंपैरिजन नहीं था, वहाँ पे कहीं सिलेबस ओवरलैप नहीं हुआ. बट एथिक्स में फॉर एग्जांपल इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस वो हम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बिहेवियर में भी पढ़ते हैं. सो आई थिंक दैट एडेड अप. और भी बहुत सारे पर्सपेक्टिव्स थे, एटीट्यूड एंड इन जनरल आई थिंक एथिक्स इज ऑल्सो अबाउट रैंडम कुछ भी सिचुएशन आ गया, कुछ केओस हो गया, आपको वो हैंडल करना है एज एन ऑफिसर. मैनेजमेंट में भी हम वही कर रहे हैं, कोई कंपनी में भी हम वही कर रहे हैं. So I think that mental attitude helped. And again, I think essay में also management helped me in terms of quoting a different example. If I have another competitor, वो शायद GS oriented एग्जाम्पल्स दे रहे होंगे ऐसे, बट मेरे ऐसे में हमेशा मैनेजमेंट आते थे एग्जाम्पल्स. तो आई थिंक वो काफ़ी मेरे लिए भी enjoyable था एंड इट एडेड अप इवेंचुअली आई थिंक.
तो मैनेजमेंट ऑप्शनल में इफ somebody is thinking of writing with this optional now and preparing with this, तो क्या स्टेप्स होने चाहिए और क्या क्या चीज़ें ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए?
फर्स्टली सर आई थिंक मेंटल बैरियर एक ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा कि ऑप्शनल स्कोरिंग नहीं है. अगर हम राइट डायरेक्शन में एफर्ट डालेंगे तो इट बिकम्स स्कोरिंग. मेरा पर्सनली आई थिंक स्कोर वाज गुड, बट आई थिंक देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट का स्कोप इन टर्म्स ऑफ अटेम्प्टिंग अ लॉट मोर क्वेश्चंस, कंप्लीटिंग द पेपर. तो आई थिंक इट्स डूएबल. सो हैविंग दैट माइंडसेट इज की. उसके बाद आई थिंक फर्स्टली इज अंडरस्टैंडिंग द सिलेबस, क्योंकि सिलेबस देख के समझ जाएगा whether we have थोड़ा previous knowledge or not and are we able to do it. And thirdly I think sources, because sources थोड़े से limited हैं. मैंने आपका I connected with you तो I could see what sources are available and what would help me. तो I think वो एक maybe mentor होना या some friend जो guide कर सकते हैं हमें in that option, because it's not very popular. तो sources बहुत कम हैं and right guidance कम मिलना भी कम है. तो वो अगर ready है तो I think we should go with the optional. It's very scoring.
ठीक है. और ऑप्शनल में चैलेंजेस क्या क्या आए? व्हाट डू यू फील इज डिफिकल्ट फॉर मैनेजमेंट एज एन ऑप्शनल?
Difficult I think was completing the syllabus, even though बहुत I think practical syllabus है, but then revision and completion I think is a challenge. And secondly ये थोड़ा numerical oriented subject है. तो अगर paper 2 की बात करें वहाँ पे there are a lot of numericals. So वो it requires a lot of time to prepare for any numerical question. So if that time investment I think थोड़ा challenge है, but once you're through with that it becomes manageable.
You're talking about revision थोड़ा सा briefly,
Yes.
तो I want to delve a little into that.
Yes.
Revision में did you have any specific method, any strategy? Because UPSC में प्रिपरेशन में सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है ये. मैंने एक महीने में हिस्ट्री पढ़ा, नेक्स्ट टाइम फिर से व्हेन आई एम ट्राइंग टू रीड इट अगेन आई एंडेड अप स्पेंडिंग 1 month. सो हाउ डिड यू हैव अ प्लान फॉर दैट, या फिर कुछ किया उसको टैकल करने के लिए?
रिविजन के लिए आई थिंक प्रीलिम्स और मेंस मैंने सेपरेट रखा था. प्रीलिम्स में आई फोकस मोर ऑन रिवाइजिंग स्टैंडर्ड बुक्स. तो मेरा रिसोर्सेज बहुत लिमिटेड था. फॉर एग्जाम्पल लक्ष्मीकांत, इफ आई एम रीडिंग फॉर पॉलिटी, आई एंश्योर दैट बिफोर प्रीलिम्स आई एम रिवाइजिंग इट 5-6 times. The first time it took a lot of time to prepare, 1 month or more than that it took. But then eventually I could figure out that what is important, what is not. So highlighting those and not preparing notes out of Lakshmikant say, standard books. Unka notes is not important. Focus on maybe reading from the book itself and revising again and again those standard books. Current affairs आप standard sources या फिर multiply कर सकते हैं, but prioritize. एंड बट मेंस में आई थिंक सिलेबस थोड़ा वाइड रहता है, स्पेसिफाइड भी रहता है कंपेयर टू प्रीलिम्स. सो नोट्स बहुत ज़रूरी हैं. स्पेसिफिकली फॉर द ऑप्शनल, मैनेजमेंट ऑप्शनल में आई हैड नोट्स फॉर एवरी सब्जेक्ट, फॉर एवरी टॉपिक. तो आई केप्ट ऑन रिवाइजिंग दोज. एंड मैंने लिमिट नहीं किया था दैट आई हैव टू स्टिक टू ओनली 2-3 pages पर एनी टॉपिक, बट आई हैड अ लॉट ऑफ नोट्स. बट आई नो किस नोट्स में क्या ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, जस्ट टू 1 day बिफोर द एग्जाम. तो वो मैंने थोड़ा प्रायोरिटाइज किया था. एंड जीएस में आई थिंक जीएस इज ऑल मोर अबाउट राइटिंग एंड एग्जीक्यूशन. सो अगर मेरा वो एक सेट पैटर्न रेडी है फॉर एवरी क्वेश्चन, नॉलेज अपने आप रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाता है फ्रॉम द प्रीलिम्स, फ्रॉम द प्रीलिम्स स्टडी जो भी मैंने किया है.
Anything special that you would want to tell the students that you feel can help the future students जो भी तैयारी करने की सोच रहे हैं या कर रहे हैं? Because you learned a lot from your mistakes and then you eventually applied them and got success. So what do you think would be that one message that you would want to send out to the students?
I would say it's not only about reading, but it's also about implementation and execution of what you're reading. So firstly, prepare the syllabus, prepare all your sources, and focus on revising all those sources. But ultimately, when it comes down to all the 3 different stages in terms of prelims, mains and interview, have that strategy, and I think have a belief in yourself as well that you will be able to get through, because that having that optimistic approach eventually pays off, specifically in the interview. I think that eventually will help you all.
Thank you very much, Surbhi. It was a lot of fun and at the same time a lot of informative things that I got to know from you. I wish you all the best and I'm very sure you're going to do very well in the future.
Thank you very much, sir, and specific thanks to you and your team, because I think management optional was not easy to handle, but you guys made it very easy for me. So I think special thanks goes to you as well.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So this is it for this discussion of UPSC toppers. I'm very sure it was informative and you learned something new, and I'm very, very certain that you're going to apply these new things in your studies if you've not done them already. Some unique aspects that the topper today talked about. If you like these series, then do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Please keep watching multiple videos that I've been posting about various toppers' lives, various toppers' preparation strategies. And I wish to see you again in another set of discussions. Take care. Bye bye.